some time at our disposal today. Unusual for a Toastmasters meeting. Today, our VP Education has told me that we can afford to extend this presentation by a few more minutes if necessary. So with that, I think let us start. Okay, so this is the 8th session. As usual, let us go through a quick recap of what we have gone through in the previous sessions. And this is based on the best-selling book on emotional intelligence by Daniel Goleman. And it is thanks to the popularity of that book that all of us, we know about emotional intelligence, but I haven't seen a program that goes into the depth of it. This is a very important topic. That's why I got into this project of going through it, reading the pages of it, and then coming and talking about it in a 10 workshop series. Essentially, what it says is that the present day education system focuses on intelligence quotient, that is IQ. But the issue here is IQ. The effect of IQ in determining a person's success is seen to be only 20%. Because most people who get into a job or who get started with an enterprise, they will have minimum a threshold level of IQ will be there. So IQ has a floor effect. It will help us get entry into a job or to get started with an enterprise. But thereafter, 80% of the success will be determined by the emotional maturity of that person. This is the result that has come out of studies called competency mapping that is done by HR practitioners and recruiters. Until recently, science didn't have much clue about emotions. Science used to consider our human brain as analogous to a computer. And computers, they do not have feelings. They are cold, logical machines. But we humans are not like that, that we know. But science didn't have a model to explain the human brain. It was the latest scientific advancement called MRI and fMRI scans that threw light on the emotional functioning of the brain. And in the words of Daniel Goleman, he had to wait until 1995 to publish this book, because by that time only this scientific understanding had provided sufficient clarity as to how emotions are triggered and how emotions control our interactions. And we have seen that emotions are survival mechanisms that nature has given to animals. And in moments of crisis, the emotional brain that has evolved millions of years ago, that is capable of shutting down the most advanced human brain that evolved only 200,000 years ago. And that is called an amygdala hijack. So that is the kind of emotional hijack that some people, they will say, I lost control, I don't know what I did. And then they say, I regret doing that. So the reason behind is supposed to be that emotional hijack, the animal brain taking over our thinking brain. And then we discussed the history of IQ and emotional intelligence and the multiple intelligences. And in emotional intelligence, we saw that there are 5 domains. First is emotional self-awareness. Second, managing emotions. Third is motivation. Fourth is empathy. And fifth is handling relationships. And then we discussed the application of emotional intelligence in day-to-day life. We discussed how it impacts close family relations. Then we worked at how emotional intelligence is applicable to our work life. And today we are going to the third area of application of emotional intelligence, that is in health and well-being. So that's what we are going to start now, mind and medicine. Let us go back some time. I think it was in 2000. One of my closest relative was in a very serious condition. He was in the ICU and we were all standing outside, anxious, and the doctor came out. I ran to the doctor and asked him, Doctor, how is the condition? The doctor was very annoyed. He was very angry, and in a very angry tone, he shouted back, the condition is very bad. Nothing can be said. And it was so painful for me at that moment. I was a bystander. I felt so hurt. How much a patient would experience if a doctor is talking like this? And does it affect that patient's health? To understand that, let us understand what is the difference between disease and illness. Disease is a medical disorder, it's a physical condition. And illness is the experience of that disease. It is a psychic, physiological condition. Traditionally, medical community has focused on curing the disease while ignoring the illness. So if there is a wound, the medical community, their focus was on curing the wound, the pain caused by that wound, as if it was not the responsibility of the medical community. Or that was the kind of thinking. But does it really affect the patient and the recovery? There was an experiment conducted in 1975 with rats. Rats were given saccharin-laced water with immunosuppressant drugs. So saccharin-laced means it is sweetened water with some drug. That drug, the activity of the drug is to reduce the immunity of the rat. And so such rats, they lost their immunity because the drug was there and they succumbed to diseases. So these rats were conditioned like this. So they know that when they were given sweet water and at the same time they experienced an immunity deficiency. Afterwards, the same rats, they were given sweetened water, but there was no drug in it. The surprising thing is that even at that time, those rats who were given this sweetened water, they experienced a reduction in their immunity. It shouldn't have happened because there was nothing in that water that was being given to the rat, nothing to suppress their immunity. But the rats, as if their immunity system, as if it had learned that in response to sweet, it was supposed to reduce the immunity. This was very surprising because at that time, this kind of a reaction was unthinkable. It was not postulated by anyone that the neural system is connected some way to the physiological system like immunity. It was just a flavor, it was just a sensation, it was just taste. And that was causing a change in the body. And that gave birth to a new field of medicine that is called psychoneuroimmunology. Meaning of it is study of effect of the mind on health and resistance to diseases. What it postulates, what it says is that all these things, the brain, mind, environment, and body, they are all interrelated and they can influence each other. So if we feel psychological stress, that can impact our body. Now, before we get into it, one caveat here, this has given rise to certain false beliefs that positive attitude is the cure-all and end-all, that if somebody is having a very upbeat positive attitude, that that person will not have any disease, or if some disease happens, that attitude itself will cure all. It is a wrong belief. It is not so. Particularly in the case of cancer, there is no clear scientific evidence has ever been found that stress level is a reason for cancer. We have heard many anecdotes, but there is no statistical scientific proof of showing this kind of a result. And this is said by in one of the best-selling books on cancer by a famous oncologist. It's the title of the book is The Malady of Emperor of All Maladies. And this is the sentence he has given there. A positive attitude does not cure cancer any more than a negative one causes it. So in case of cancer, it is not attitude that's the culprit. But in some other cases, like cardiac diseases and contagious diseases, there is scientific proof that the state of mind causes aggravation, or it can cause expedited recovery. But there too, keep in mind, the state of mind is not all. The state of mind can complement the medical regimen. Please do not go away with the thought that a positive mind is enough to keep our body healthy. No, sometimes medication and surgery might be necessary, but what the positive mind can do is to improve our health and expedite the recovery process. Now, these are the three toxic emotions. And we will go one by one, what are their impact on the body. First is anger. The reason, the first person who said that anger can be related, it can cause cardiological problems, that person's name is unfortunately lost to history. Because it happened like this. Mr. Friedman and Roseman, they were two cardiologists and they were having a very good practice. But they ran into an unexpected problem because the chairs they had kept in the waiting room, that was getting worn out in a much faster, much more frequent than normal manner. So they used to regularly call upholsterers, they used to rectify the chairs and go. And one time, a new upholsterer came. That person came there, he took a look at the chairs, he observed that the wearing out is happening only at the front few inches of the seat, as well as on the front few inches of the handrest. And he made a profound discovery that with a very rare scientific sophistication, he articulated in words that is thick with scientific jargon. He asked, what the hell is wrong with your patients? He said that these people seems like mentally disturbed in a state of mind. They seems to be sitting only at the very edge of the seat, jumping up and down, and they look like they are fidgeting a lot and clawing up on this handrest. And the upholsterer was so, novel in his linkage of a person's nature to cardiac issues, but these cardiologists paid absolutely no attention to the upholsterer. Yes, he was just an upholsterer and they were the doctors. And the doctors, when with their business as usual, they did very rigorous scientific study of the reason for cardiac issues. After 5 years, they found that the personality type could be a reason for heart issues. At that time, a light bulb went on their head. They remembered 5 years ago, our upholsterer had told us, but by that time, that person's contact was totally lost. And for that reason, the person who first said that personality type is related to cardiac issues, his name is lost to history. There are many, many studies that shows that there is an increased risk of cardiac issues related to anger. Now the issue here is that what is the way out? If we try to suppress anger, that's also bad. It is seen to increase blood pressure. If you try to ventilate anger all the time, that's also bad. It seems to increase other health issues. Then what to do? The answer comes from this doctor who has written a book that's titled Anger Kills. What they say is that anger expressed or not is less important. What is really important is it chronic anger or is it chronic hostility? If you are the kind of person who is ready for a fight all the time, if you get into a car, there is heavy traffic block, you get angry at the world, you go to the office, you feel the boss is mistreating you, you feel the subordinates are inefficient, and you go home, you think your spouse and parents and children, they're all messing the whole thing up and you're ready for a fight all the time, that is the culprit. So the antidote that is recommended by Dr. Redford William is to ask these I am worth it questions. So when you're afflicted with cancer, ask these questions. First question, is this important? So when you feel so much hostile towards somebody, ask this question first. Is it important enough for me to put my heart at risk? Second, is what I am thinking and feeling appropriate to the facts? In a traffic block, we might be thinking that somebody is deliberately digging a ditch on the road just to keep us waiting. Is it accurate to the fact? And is the situation modifiable? Can we stop the car there and start walking to our office that may be 10 kilometers, 20 kilometers? Is it modifiable or not? And is it worth for me to take the action necessary to modify it? Is it worth for me to walk that 20 kilometers or just wait there patiently in the car? Ask these kind of questions. This is an important technique in emotional intelligence. Try to put our feelings into words. The moment we associate, if we are able to describe a feeling or a sensation in words that will instantly bring that thing under our better control. So the antidote for anger is these am I worth it? I am worth it questions. Okay. Next is anxiety. Anxiety, it can be two types. So one type is good and one type is bad. Like before going for an exam, maybe we will experience a kind of anxiety that will help us perform better. That's a good level of anxiety, but it can reach a toxic stress level where we will feel that we have no control, and it can, if this continuing chronic toxic stress can even damage the brain architecture. Those people who are exposed to continuous anxious environment, they are seen to have their brain function changed so that they will be very easily get upset and they might become very annoyed immediately. Their threshold of anxiety and stress will be very low. And these are the results of this compromised, this toxic stress. First is compromised immunity. They can get increase in viral infections, plaque in blood vessel that will expose someone to cardiac issues, accelerated diabetes, increase in asthma, accelerate cancer, it is not causing cancer, it can accelerate cancer, gastrointestinal ulceration and brain damage and memory loss. All these can be the result of toxic stress. And in case of women, in case of men, anger seems to be the culprit causing cardiac issues. In case of women, it is seen to be anxiety. And there was a very rigorous scientific study on immunity, the effect of stress on immunity. People, the stress level of people was assessed very scientifically, and then they were systematically exposed to cold virus. So people whose stress level was measured, and those people were measured in a very systematic manner, and they were exposed to cold virus. It was seen that 27% of people with little stress contracted cold, whereas 47% with high level of stress contracted cold. So it is a 20% increase in contacting cold for people who are at high stress level. And maybe we can see it in our own homes. Many couples have said that about 3 or 4 days after a very intense argument, they got afflicted with cold or this kind of contagious disease. And 3 or 4 days is the typical incubation period of this viruses. So there is very strong, this is an established fact that high level of anxiety can expose us more to contagious diseases. And the antidote here is some relaxation technique and meditation. And today we will do a live demonstration of a technique to get rid of anxiety or stress. Next is depression. And there was 100 bone marrow transplant patients, they were studied. 13 of them were depressed and 87 of them, they were not depressed. And after 1 year of this bone marrow transplant, out of this 87 not depressed people, 34 were surviving after 1 year. So it's about 40%. Now, out of these 13 depressed people, can you guess how many would have survived after 1 year? Please, I would like to see some response. You can type out or you can say what is your guess? For the
Nobody survived.
Nobody survived. Okay. Any other answer?
Three survived.
Actually, only one survived. So, had it been the same ratio, about 5 should have survived. About 40% of 13 is 5, but instead there was only 1 who survived. That shows depression increased the likelihood of, or decreased the likelihood of survival by about 80%. This means that depression doesn't cause, it may not be, it doesn't cause the disease by itself, but it causes it to worsen once it happens. Another issue with depression is that the symptoms of depression, it will be easily mistaken with other symptoms, a symptom of other diseases. So it is difficult to diagnose and treat. And another thing, rather than a psychological reason, the reason for this high mortality rate could be that the depressed patients may be worse about complying with their medical regimen. They may not be taking their medicine at the right time. They may be cheating on diet and all. So in any case, if among the depressed people, the survival rate is very low compared to the non-depressed people. And for that reason, it is said that for patients with serious diseases, if they are depressed, please treat them for depression also, because it is going to save a lot economically as well as in terms of health and fast recovery. Now, we can do just a practical, a live demonstration as to how to handle this kind of upsetting feelings. This was presented by Darren Tay in his World Championship winning speech in 2016. I would request all of you to just switch on the video. Let us do it together. Please, I can see you all. Please switch on the video. Okay. Yes, okay. Right. Now think about something that is upsetting for you, an upsetting feeling, or if you are concerned about a deadline that is coming up, if you are concerned about an interview or a test or children's education or the environment or about the flood situation in Kerala, just think about something that is upsetting for you at this moment. Okay, have you thought about it? I think so. Okay. Now take an object in your hand. Here I have in my hand a pen that is safe to drop on the floor. Take an object in your hand. Okay. Now imagine this object you are holding is the issue that you are upset about. If it is the exam fear, if it is the stage fright, if you're afraid about exam or about the future of children or about the climate challenge or whatever, imagine this object in hand, that is the issue. Just look at it. Don't fight with it. Don't deny it. Don't run away from it. Just observe it. So you have that issue in your hand. Just observe it. As you observe, you will feel that it weakens and then drop it. Okay. Try doing it. I have tried it myself and I made some people do it. They told that it was effective. Maybe I don't know how far it was effective for you now, but just I would request you to watch the talk by Darren Tay and just practice it the way he demonstrates it. And this is seen to be effective for one reason. First is when we objectify a feeling, there itself, it puts a distance between us and our own feelings. And then we observe it, there is something that goes on behind in our mind that I do not want to describe. Experience it yourself, and we can easily drop it off. Okay, so this is one technique, and see for yourself whether it is effective. That for subclinical depression, anxiety, and all, this kind of techniques can be effective. But if it is really severe and clinical depression, maybe medication will be very necessary. Okay, so with that, we have covered the toxic emotions. Now let's get into the tonic emotions. So those three, anger, anxiety, and depression, they were worsening the condition, worsening health condition. There are certain emotions and activities that will improve our health condition. That is optimism, relationship, and support groups. Let us go through one by one. Optimism. Another study, 122 men, they had their first heart attack. Out of them, 25 were most pessimistic and 25 were most optimistic. That means the 25 after the first heart attack, they were optimistic. They felt that they are going to recover, things are going to be okay. And the 25 were most pessimistic. They were thinking that things are going to go bad and worse for them from there. Out of this 25 most optimistic, 19 were survived even after 8 years. Now guess, how many of the 25 most pessimistic would have survived after 8 years? Any guesses? Some guesses, please.
Nobody.
Okay.
6.
4. So among the most optimistic, 19 had survived. The most pessimistic, only 4 had survived. There again, almost a 5-fold decrease or a 5-fold increase in the mortality rate for the pessimistic people. So it was not the best predictor for survival was not the damage to heart or the cholesterol level or the number of blockages or blood pressure. It was the mental outlook. That was the best predictor of the chance of survival for patients who have recovered from a first heart attack. So it pays to be more optimistic. Second is friends and family. This one we have discussed earlier. A study was started in 1938 that they followed more than 700 men from different economic backgrounds. They followed them for more than 75 years. It was very rigorous. They took record of their blood cholesterol level, their academic level, their interaction with their parents, their physical regimen, their diet, their economic background, their salary, social position, all those things, they were meticulously recorded year after year. And when they reached the 75th year of the study, they did an analysis. They checked what about these men in their 50s would have best predicted their health and happiness in their 70s. And what was the finding? Would it be, let me give you the answer. It was not their body mass index. It was not the amount of fat they had in their body. It was not the cholesterol level. It was not the intelligence level. It was not the income level. It was not the asset, the $1 million asset they had or no penny in the balance. None of that was the predictor of their health and happiness in their 70s. But only one thing, that was the quality of the relations they had. People who had loving and caring relations, they were happier and healthier in their old age period. So it is actually love and being in good relations that makes people happy and healthy, not anything else. Being in good relations, somebody might think that I need to have hundreds of thousands of friends. Not like that. Only a handful of friends, maybe 4, 5, or 6, who we can reach out to without hesitation at a time of crisis, who we can ring in the midnight hour and ask for help without feeling bad about it, and who we can sure that they will have our back when it is required. In many cases, it may be close family friends and the closest family members and the closest friend, usually 4 or 5 in that range. And some people, they could be alone. Alone maybe they may be staying away from their closest near and dear, but if they are in very good loving and caring relations, if they maintain that sort of connection with those people, they were not lonely. Being lonely and being alone is two different things. Alone is a physical state. A person can, if a person is isolated, he is alone. But if that person, even if he is in the midst of a sea of people, but he cannot talk to even a single person in that case, that person is lonely. So being lonely is very, very bad for health. Be in good, loving, caring relations, irrespective of the distance, irrespective of the number of people, with a handful of people, 1 or 2, that's also good enough. But have that loving and caring relations. That's the only thing that is going to keep us healthy and happy. And next is support groups. Support groups, we have heard about things like Alcoholics Anonymous that help alcoholics to recover. In a study of women with terminal breast cancer, it was seen that women who attended weekly support group meetings, they survived almost 37 months against those who faced it on their own. Those women who didn't, though they didn't have any kind of this support group, they survived only for about 19 months. But those women who could attend support groups, their life was for about almost double. So often in support groups only, the women, they could really share their feelings, because all those people in that support group, they had either experienced it or they were experiencing it. It was consisting of people who are in similar situation. If there is that kind of a support group, in particularly in case of terminal cancer and all, medicine cannot do much, cannot do anything. In their cases, support group was seen to be very effective, and it said that had it been a new drug that produced such 19 months or say 18 months of extension in life expectancy, pharma companies would be battling to produce it. But it is not a costly medicine. Just a group of people who will sit together, support each other, and share their pain, sorrow, as well as the moments of joy that they had. That was seen to be very, very effective. So these are the three tonic emotions and activities. First is optimism, second, maintaining loving and caring relations, and third is support groups. So with that, let us come back to that question, the way the medical practitioners should behave. When I was told by that rude doctor that situation is very bad, I had that pain in my heart. And science shows that that can impact the patient's health. So this is a line written by a patient to his surgeon in an open letter. He said, compassion is not mere hand-holding, it is good medicine. So there is a need for medicine and medical practitioners to be compassionate based on scientific evidence. With that, we have come to the end of the workshop today. So please, this is time for question and answers.